I don't play God. I play weird, slightly off-brand Dr. Frankenstein. Today we're building art dolls from scratch. Wooden bead joints, clay limbs, squishy sewn bodies, and the result is really tiny weirdos with a whole lot of personality. Hi, if this is your first time on my channel, I'm Rosie from Teeny Tinkers. If you're not new here, you might remember me from other weird art doll videos such as the Kevins, or that one weird clay cat I made like 4 years ago. But it's been a while since I've made a weird art doll, and I thought it was time to crack out the Sculpey again. If you've been wanting to make art dolls, maybe watching this video is the exact inspiration you need, or maybe you can be sculpting along while watching this. I'll try and give some tips throughout so that you can follow along, like this one. I'm using foam and painter's tape to create my head base. Now, you can use solid clay if you like, but it feels like a waste of clay and it makes the head super heavy. The clay I'm using in particular is super Sculpey and white, although I'll be so honest, the living doll variety is actually my favorite for doll making. I just wasn't able to find any locally at the time of filming. If I was making a BJD, I would lean more into paper or stone clays, which sand smoother, but since these are going to be a more short-term project and I'm not planning on casting them or anything, I prefer polymer clays instead. That's because polymer clay isn't really average modeling clay. It's basically plastic. It hardens in your oven and stays exactly how you left it. No kiln, no drama, no waiting for it to air dry, none of that. And you can leave it for weeks and come back to it and keep sculpting. But Rosie, I don't have sculpting tools. Where did you even get those? Were they expensive? So the answer is nah. These are from Amazon and AliExpress. I honestly can't remember, but it's only a few dollars for like a set of tools. I like metal ball tools and silicone smoothing tools the best. I also like to warm them up in hot water, which makes smoothing things out easier and it makes the clay more movable. That's because the warm metal or silicone will help make the clay, which is again basically plastic, much more spreadable and movable. I like to use a basic ball tool like this one, or the end of a paintbrush, to lightly press in the eye sockets. This helps you avoid that flat pancake face stage. But please remember, put the eyes halfway down the head, not towards the top. That's a mistake I had made many times at the beginning of my sculpting career, but people have higher foreheads than you think, especially babies and children. And even though they have high foreheads, their eyes really don't belong on those foreheads. So yeah, halfway down is a good rule of thumb. Regardless, I do find that the Super Sculpey standard like this is a little bit less malleable and harder to smooth than the living doll clay, which honestly just makes it perfect when you want your dolls to have a just got out of therapy expression on their face, which a lot of my clay dolls tend to have anyways. Alright, well, one of them doesn't look like it got out of therapy unless it was hypnotherapy because they're totally asleep because I did not have glass eyes on hand to inset. And the second doll I made, I just decided to do painted on eyes. Also, when you try and sculpt, don't try to do it all at once. Start with your skull shape and then add a little nose, cheeks, and then lips. And for lips, they're just like a flattened M shape. If you whisper meh while sculpting, maybe it will give you some artistic inspiration. Clay art dolls like this are not my strong suit, but what's important is the fun of creating and trying new things. Experimenting and finding out what works for you is really what got me into making resin ball jointed dolls in the first place. Okay, time to sculpt hands and feet. If this is your first time sculpting or if you're feeling nervous, start with mitten hands and sock feet. It is totally okay. It's literally just baby steps. If you're ready, you separate out the fingers and toes. Use a sharp blade like a craft blade to separate your fingers apart from the hand block. Then round them out gently. Also, pro tip, thumb goes way lower than you think, like halfway down the side of the palm. Otherwise, your doll's basically trying to hitchhike. And that's not a hitchhiker I'd want to pick up. I mean, I'm probably not picking up any hitchhikers. I've seen way too many horror movies for that. If you're making a bigger doll, like maybe quarter scale or bigger, tiny wires inside the hand help support the fingers while baking and sculpting. Without it, sometimes the hands and the fingers can kind of flatten out and it's not super cute. But at this scale, which is like 1/8 scale, it really shouldn't be an issue. If you're not a new sculptor, or if you're following along to this video, let me know what's harder for you, faces or hand. Let me know down in the comments so that we can suffer together. Once you're done, like most or all polymer clays, I'm pretty sure all polymer clays, but maybe not, you do have to bake them to harden the clay. I do this at about 250 degrees for about 20 minutes, depending on how thick your piece is. While that bakes, here's a polymer clay fun fact. Did you know that polymer clay was first used for dolls in the 1930s by a German doll maker named Kath Kruse? Or at least that's what Google is leading me to believe. But people have been using it for all sorts of things since then. And in particular, the clay I'm using, Super Sculpey, was originally used for industrial prototypes. That's kind of neat. But the dolls are now out of the oven. So once they're baked, I give them a super quick sand and I paint them because everybody deserves a glow up. Like all of my face-ups, including those on resin BJDs, I do spray 1 to 2 coats of the Mr. Super Clear Matte Medium. Once it's fully dry, we can go ahead and paint. I used pan pastels, watercolor brush pens, watercolor pencils, and some acrylic paints. My acrylic paints are Vallejo model paints. Watercolor brush pens are the same set I've had from Amazon for literally 4 years. Watercolor pencils are Derwent Ink Tense pencils. And the chalk pastels I'm using are pan pastels. Yes, as I'm painting these dolls, one of them has insanely big eyes. And yes, they are judging me for making them like that, but I just like big eyes. The faces are not 100% smooth, but I think it's giving them a bit of a rustic charm that I really like. Once the faces are painted, I go ahead and add hair. With ball jointed dolls, I would typically make a wig cup and then make the wig onto that so it can be changed. But with these little art dolls, I'm just going to attach the hairs directly to their head. And typically for the glue, I would use like a Gorilla Glue wood glue. But again, because I don't need this to be flexible, I'm just going to go ahead and use Clear Aleene's gel glue. I am using viscose fiber for this, which is super soft and beautiful. And I want to thank my friend Pablo from Hopeful Creation for bringing me some because I love it. I had to leave that to dry for a while, but in the meantime, we can get started on the bodies. So something these dolls are getting that the Kevins and the cat never did is wooden bead joints. This means my dolls will actually be able to move. Also, fun fact, wooden joints in dolls date back to the 19th century in Europe. So technically, this is historical work. Totally fancy, right? So I'm sewing the beads onto cloth bodies, which to be honest, I sort of just eyeballed for size when I was cutting the pieces out. And typically I would use my sewing machine, but I was feeling very rustic about this and I wanted to hand sew the whole thing. So that's what I did. I really like the cloth bodies for these because I'm a sucker for like a squishy palm-sized doll. I really like them. You know, maybe even love them. I was trying to think back to why I love palm-sized squishy dolls so much. And in the memory banks, I realized the first tiny doll I really loved and wanted wasn't even a real doll. Back in the 90s, I was totally obsessed with Disney because I was a child. And in particular, I really loved Mulan. So in the Mulan movie, after A Girl Worth Fighting For, if you know, you know, Mulan and her squad, I'm not sure, come across a burning village and there's just this like tiny little doll left and it's just the size of her palm and its hair is like blowing in the wind softly while it's just dead silent and there's just like fire. It's honestly freaking heartbreaking. The scene destroyed me, but I also remember just feeling like that little doll was so tiny and fragile and just wispy and lonely and I really wanted it. And maybe it was like part that I wanted to save it, that I felt sad for it. I don't quite understand what my child brain was thinking, but ever since then, I just love hand-sized squishy dolls. I don't know, or maybe it was the combination of tiny doll, enormous emotional baggage, maybe. So that was sort of a sad reference and maybe a mood killer. Let's pretend instead I said Scrunch from Lilo and Stitch. That's a way happier example. Once I finished the doll and stitched all of the joints onto the cloth body and then stitched the clay parts onto the beads as well, I go ahead and make a couple outfits for them. I did hand stitch most of this. I had one dress previously made, so I kind of worked with that, but everything else was just hand stitched for the outfits, including a really cute little orange themed sweater I made. I'm really happy with this little cardigan, guys. I really love it. With the outfits done, I'm going to dress these guys up and let's take a look at how they ended up. So I think they're pretty cute in like a obviously handmade, weird little friend type way. For me, that's what making art dolls is all about. But for now, that's basically it. If you loved watching these little friends come to life, don't forget to like, subscribe, and maybe make your own. If you do make your own, I would love to see the video or the pictures. I always love to see the stuff you're making. But for now, if you're already subscribed, thanks so much for subscribing. If you're new here, I hope you like the content and consider subscribing. The channel recently passed 12,000 subscribers, and that was absolutely awesome, guys. Thank you so much for that. I just wanted to acknowledge how awesome each and every one of you guys is. And as always, I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye!